Well, first, I want to say it is an honor to be given the opportunity to share with all of you today. When I first heard of Pastor Bill's passing, I grieved for several reasons. One, because we lost a great leader in the kingdom, and I believe that. Number two, for his family, of course, those he left behind, grandchildren, children, and the church that he led, and grieved over that. But one of the things that I grieved over the most in my heart personally was I never got a chance, and I didn't say thank you to him for all that he did for me and in my life. Just around 28 years ago, I was invited by a friend of mine named Donnie Melton to attend a church in Duncanville, Texas called Church on the Rock South. That was the name of it at the time. And there was a youth center there, of course, many of you know, called the Rockatorium. And this place is the place where I was invited to go and would be eventually introduced to Christ for the first time. And that invitation would end up changing my life forever. As a kid, I went to a small Baptist church a few times, but because my mom worked nights, we eventually stopped going. So walking into this church, to say the least, was a little shocking. People were lifting their hands, and some were dancing and jumping up and down. Some had some like tambourines and all kinds of things. And it was a little surprising to see it. And some were even speaking a language that I'd never heard. And to be honest, for me, it was a little weird. But it was through that church and through that youth ministry that I found a relationship with God. And behind the scenes of it all were men who were leading the charge, men who were doing their best to reach people like me. People who were lost, broken, and without a personal relationship with Jesus. And Pastor Bill was one of those leaders. When I think of Pastor Bill, a few things come to my mind. First, his big smile. I still remember it to this day. I'm 40 years old, so 30 years later, I can sense, I can feel it. His genuine smile. When he would say he loved you, like many of us know, I mean, it was for real. It was genuine. You sense that his smile and just joy. It was like, do you ever have a tough day? And of course, I know that he did, I'm sure, but he just continued to just pour out constantly his love, especially to the young people. Of course, for me, that was the youth ministry that I was a part of. And so he genuinely had a care for me. It was like, even though he didn't know me, his heart for people and young people, and especially those who were lost and kind of far off from God, his heart obviously was for it, was evident. His preaching, I also remember, comes to my mind. Although I don't remember direct quotes, I do remember him not being afraid to say whatever needed to be said in order to win a person for Christ. I remember him saying things at times, and I remember thinking, gosh, that guy seems a little overkill, but looking back on it now, he was just not afraid to say whatever needed to be said to win a student or a young person to Christ. His heart for the lost was so evident. And simply number three, and this is what I think about most over the past few days, about his decision, or his dedication, rather, to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. There are two men under Pastor Bill's leadership that God has used to change my life, Andrew Chilbert and Joel Eason, both of which have led me, trained me, and shaped me into the leader, husband, and father that I am today. Over the past 13 years, I've served in ministry, and I've learned that only great leaders produce great leaders. There's a book written by Jim Collins, in a book called Good to Great, that many leaders have read, and he talks about the levels of leadership. And the level 5 leader is what he calls or describes as the executive leader, who is a person who is ambitious, but their ambition is first and foremost for the cause and not themselves. When I think of that, I think of Pastor Bill Virgin. I think about him. I think about him putting the purposes and will of God above his own dreams and his own desires. And the fact that he could reproduce people like him, to love people and to lead people into a relationship with God. No doubt Pastor Bill was a level 5 leader. In a video I recently watched, he speaks of going to a place to get alone with God. And he said, as many of us know, he talked about his desire to build his dreams and his own kingdom, loving God, but doing it the way that he wanted to do it. And then he talks about getting to this place of surrendering to God and letting God use him however and whenever. And even when I say these words now, it truly does inspire me to live the same way, to surrender my life and my plans and my ministry to God, putting his will above mine. When I watched that video, for me personally, it just reminded me that ministry, certainly not about fame or what we get or titles and all of that. It's about surrendering our plans and our will and dedicating those over to God. And Pastor Bill did that, no doubt. It's because Pastor Bill's willingness to surrender his life to God, and because of that work, that I stand here today. Over the past 13 years, I spent 9 of those as a youth pastor, and similar to Bill, I did all I could, literally, and even sometimes scratching the surface of sin maybe, to reach a student for Christ. And that's because of what Pastor Bill did for so many young people like myself. Because I never forgot that's what he had done for me. And over the past 3.5 years, I've been able to plant and pastor a church here in Tampa, Florida area. And when I've seen so many people come to faith and grow in their relationship with God. And the reason I want to share that is because Pastor Bill's work, and I want everyone to know this, and I wish I could tell him right now to his face that his work is still working. His great work for the kingdom of God is still producing a harvest. With every person we reach, Pastor Bill and his family's efforts, and all of your family's efforts, for all of his family, all that work is still working. And I'm part of the reason for your effort. And so many that God uses me to reach, it's all part of and got started from the ministry of Pastor Bill's youth ministry there in Duncanville, Texas. This is a verse that came to my mind and I'd like to share. And I was reading it this morning, and it embodies to me Pastor Bill's life. And it comes out of 2 Timothy 4. It says, "Preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, encourage with great patience and careful instruction. For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear." I think about that, and I think about how Pastor Bill was never afraid what needed to be said. Didn't care what people thought about him, but just preached the word. And then it says, "They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. But you, keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist." And no question, Pastor Bill was an evangelist. His heart for reaching the lost is evident. "Discharge all the duties of your ministry. For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time for my departure is near. I have fought the good fight, I've finished the race, and I've kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all those who have longed for his appearing." And I believe wholeheartedly that Pastor Bill finished the race. When I heard even the location of his passing, I thought, he finished the race. And as a pastor myself, I hope to do the same. I hope to live a life like Pastor Bill, where I could finish the race that God calls me to. So today, I want to say thank you, first to Pastor Bill. I'm sorry I never got the chance to personally thank you for what you did for my life. And I am so thankful that you finished your race. Your seeds are still growing and producing a harvest. I also want to say thank you to Pastor Bill's family for allowing him to fulfill the purposes of God in his life. As a father of 4 myself and been married for the past 12 years, I know the amount of work and effort it takes for children and spouses to have to go through to allow ministry to happen. And without your efforts as well, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I say thank you to you. Thank you for the sacrifice, the time, the effort it takes to do the work of the ministry. And because of that work, I want you to know your work is still working. The work that you've put in is worth it. So thank you for your sacrifice and time. And now for me, I hope to carry out what Pastor Bill did for so many, to finish my race, to preach the word, and to carry it out until Christ completes the work that he began in my life at the Rockatorium and through the youth ministry that Pastor Bill led. So thank you, Pastor Bill. You were my first and you were my only youth pastor in all of my life. And I'm forever grateful. God bless. Take care. And thank you so much, Pastor Bill, and to all of you. And we're praying for you through this time of difficulty. But we know that Pastor Bill is in a place and around the Father where we soon will be one day too.